Hello YouTube, this is Exorsizzle. I'm sorry to jump back in time, but I am definitely not done with Fatal Frame 4 yet, at all. I moved on to the 5th game because I figured that people could play the 4th on their own, but then I remembered it's actually probably the hardest one to get working, and once again, the translation patch was a little weird to me. I didn't understand it. It didn't make sense, you know. Anyway, today we're going to talk about the ghosts I haven't gone over yet. First up, let's talk about Choushiro Kirishima. He was a cop working on the mainland prior to around 1970, maybe a little bit before that, but ended up pursuing Yo Haibara back to the island so he could arrest him for the murders Yo committed. While searching the basement of Haibara Hospital for Yo, Choushiro found Ruka and the 4 other accompanists in the Moonlight Well and returned them to their parents. This is how he met Ruka's mother Sayaka and how they ended up becoming friends. Choushiro left the island but kept in contact with Sayaka and actually fell in love with her, but it was unrequited, sadly. 2 years after the failed ritual, Choushiro returned to the island to try to get Yo once and for all. He actually witnessed Sakuya blooming in the courtyard, but somehow did not bloom. Either he's immune somehow, which doesn't seem possible, or he just didn't look directly at her. I'm confused. But then again, Ruka and Misaki both look at Sakuya, not Sayaka, and they don't bloom, so I don't know. Let me know if you have any ideas. Anyway, Choushiro returned to Haibara Hospital, finding Yo on the roof hiding behind some sheets with a knife. Yo stabbed him, of course, but Choushiro put all of his last energy into throwing both of them off the roofs to their deaths. 8 years later, in 1980, after Ruka returns to Getsuyuu Island to investigate her lost memories, her deceased mother Sayaka wakes up Choushiro's spirit and asks him to protect her daughter. She gives him the literal ghost of her own spirit stone flashlight. She has a broken flashlight in her room. I don't know, I think it's hilarious that a ghost has a ghost flashlight that can soothe other ghosts. Next up is one of Choushiro's friends from college, Takashi Aiba. He was a pretty big fan of Dr. Azo and initially traveled to Getsuyuu to study his research and exhibits in the Azo Museum. Dr. Azo's research on the island inspired Takashi to do his own research on the mass and Getsuyuu syndrome. He tried to send letters about his research to Choushiro, but the letters were burned by the hospital staff to keep the information contained in them from being leaked. The letters start out talking about Takashi's mask research, but then move on to mentioning his sister contracting Getsuyuu syndrome from witnessing the Kagura disaster. Then he talks about how Soya Yomotsuki is probably making a new mask of the lunar eclipse as he writes this. The next letter shows that he actually got to see the mask of the lunar eclipse, and he couldn't handle it. He could feel his soul being sucked away and reset as he looked at it. The mask took away so much of his soul that he could no longer see anything but the mask, and in desperation he gouged out his own eyes. It didn't help, though. He could still see it. It's unknown what caused Takashi's death. It could have been him gouging out his eyes, but it could have also been that he bloomed. I'm not really sure, but in ghost form, he looks really bloody, kind of like he just gouged out his eyes, so I'm leaning towards that. I might change my mind, though. Takashi had a younger sister named Iori who went to the island with him. We don't really know a lot about Iori other than that she went to the Kagura and contracted Getsuyuu syndrome and was hospitalized sometime later. She purposely broke the door to her room so she wouldn't have to go outside. Very relatable. Her ghost also wears face bandages, which is kind of weird. I'm not really sure why this is. Maybe she wanted to shut out the outside world even more. Maybe there was a missing note somewhere mentioning her gouging out her own eyes as well, or maybe Takashi did it. I really don't know. What the heck, Iori? Iori attacks another mysterious woman named Natsuki Shiono in Chapter 2 outside of Iori's broken door. The ghost list, according to the translation patch, says that she waited for her lover to visit her every day by the entrance to the ward, but he never came, making her illness even worse. Now it's time for one of my favorite ghosts, Yuukou Magaki. Magaki was born in 1921 and became a successful painter, making many large financial contributions to the hospital, as well as artistic ones such as the design on the room keys. At some point, Magaki contracted Getsuyuu syndrome and was hospitalized at Getsuyuu Hall. He continued painting, possibly even more so than before. When people contract Getsuyuu syndrome, they like to pour their soul into something else, kind of like they're recording it onto a tape, so that when they lose more of their soul in the future, they can replay that tape by looking at the object they put their soul into, getting their memories back. If that doesn't make sense, let me know and I will try again. With Magaki, that of course was his paintings. Magaki was also extremely reclusive. He hated people touching his work and interrupting him. He could be a very scary, hostile man. I believe he also wrote in a really hard to understand way, but that might just be the translation, or the fact that he was born in 1921. As Magaki lost more and more of his memories to Getsuyuu syndrome, he got more and more visions of the future that helped him paint. One night, Magaki started screaming, and when a nurse went to investigate, he grabbed her and yelled some nonsense, but also the words eradication and destruction. The first of Magaki's creepy paintings was just Sakuya's 5 accompanists, but the second was The Day Without Suffering. He was literally having a vision of the future. He goes on a super long antisocial screw everyone rant about the painting of The Day Without Suffering. It is the flower of relief. We will be relieved by extinction. This unbelievably bright extinction will bloom across the entire island. All the filth will bloom. He really didn't like anyone. When The Day Without Suffering did finally occur, Magaki witnessed Sakuya blooming, ultimately leading to his death sometime later, which I'm sure he was probably really happy about. The game never specifies when they die after blooming, unfortunately, as far as I know. I really wish it did. I really wish I could give you an answer, but I don't have one. I'm sorry. Now, time for a really weird, really creepy, really vague ghost. Kyouko Kitazume. According to her ghostless entry, she was a Getsuyuu syndrome patient hospitalized at Haibara Hospital being punished for some reason in an underground punishment chamber in the basement of Haibara Hospital. Why the heck do they have a punishment chamber? What the fuck? They hung her upside down there and forgot about her. It's unknown if she died from being upside down for too long or if she died from blooming. To be fair, this could have been another form of experimental treatment, but still, it's a very scary thought to me. I don't know. Next up, Dr. Shoji Katagiri, Dr. Haibara's assistant. Shoji was actually a really good man and just wanted to help people, contrary to his terrifying appearance as a ghost. He came to the island very optimistic about finding a cure for Getsuyuu syndrome and working under Dr. Haibara, but was quickly disappointed in his boss's unethical practices. He was filled with guilt for the harm caused by Dr. Haibara's experimental procedures, but after seeing Soya's masculine eclipse, he felt himself drawn to the most experimental procedure of all, the homecoming. He wanted to not only see the homecoming, he also wanted to put on the mask himself. After the homecoming, Katagiri heard children's voices coming from inside the moonlight well outside Haibara Hospital. He of course knew that they were the 5 accompanists from the homecoming that had gone missing, but ended up feeling so guilty that he sent a semi-anonymous tip to the police anyway. Thank you, Katagiri. We don't know what happened to Katagiri after that, but we do know that he did stay on the island and bloom with the rest of the islanders. The next ghost is Tsubaki Tono, the vessel in the Kagera, aka the tourist version of the homecoming. Tsubaki came to Rogetsu Island to work as a nurse at the suggestion of her uncle and became in charge of the 3rd floor of Rogetsu Hall, the floor where the patients with the more serious Getsuyuu syndromes were kept, such as Yuukou Magaki and Kageri Sendou. She became well known on the island for her hard work and dedication, and this along with her sensitivity and beauty led to her being selected to be the vessel in the Kagera. She accepted the role happily, eager to give back to the islanders that had treated her so well. On the night of the lunar eclipse, September 17, 1970, Tsubaki performed the dance with her 5 accompanists, unknowingly directly on top of the homecoming going on simultaneously. According to the Zero Wiki, the homecoming started negatively impacting the Kagera and culminated in Tsubaki and all of her 5 accompanists dying. Tsubaki's cause of death was a heart attack, but we don't really know how her accompanists died. Next, Sakuya's first nurse, who doesn't even have a name. We don't really know anything about her either, other than that she was driven so crazy by Sakuya's residents that she ended up running into Sakuya's room and killing herself right in front of her. After this, a second nurse named Shie Sonozaki was brought in. Sakuya scared Shie so badly that after only a short period of time, she put in a request to be moved to a separate ward. This was denied, however, and Shie slowly started becoming affected by Sakuya's residents as well. She started having trouble remembering Sakuya's face even after just seeing her, which does sound pretty scary to be fair. After the homecoming, Sakuya was brought down to the Shrine of Mourning where they waited for her to wake up, so Shie was given a desk in the power distribution room to watch over her. Over time, Shie realized that Sakuya could not possibly be alive, even though the medical data stated otherwise, and this of course scared her a lot. Sakuya was in a coma with no life support for 2 years, and somehow none of her organs failed. I'm not a doctor, but I don't know, that doesn't sound good. As I mentioned in the last video, Shie was one of the first people Sakuya saw when she woke up and bloomed, and Shie, of course, bloomed as well. The next ghost we're going to talk about is Yaw and Sakuya's daughter, Ayako. Ayako was born in 1958, so she was 12 years old when her mom passed the fuck out, and 14 when her mom woke up and killed everybody. Anyway, she was hospitalized after displaying sudden symptoms, and due to her being referred by Grandpa Shigeto, basically the president of Rogetsu Island, she was treated with a lot of undue respect. Her last name was hidden from the other patients to hide the nepotism. Ayako took after Yo apparently, at least according to Shigeto, meaning she liked to pull a lot of messed up pranks. She didn't ever full-on murder a human, but she did cut the head off of Madoka's canary, and she pushed Madoka down the stairs. Ayako was extremely sadistic, and the more she liked somebody, the meaner and more violent she was towards them, meaning her favorite person of all was Madoka. She just didn't know how to express it properly. Ayako also cut up the ear of a nurse, presumably Fuyuko Shiratsuki, and dragged her by her hair back to her room on one occasion, although I'm not sure why she did that or how she even did that, considering she was only 12 to 14 years old and she looks pretty small. Interestingly, Ayako's mother Sakuya collected dolls. Ayako did too, but she destroyed her dolls, hanging their severed limbs from her ceiling. This is number one, really, really creepy, and number two, I think it's another connection between Sakuya and Yo and their pretty disturbing relationship. Yo messes up Sakuya's dolls. He destroys that. I don't know if that makes sense or not. I feel like there's some symbolism there, on some level. Anyway, on the day without suffering, Ayako woke up and heard something outside of her room and went outside to check it out. It was, of course, somebody blooming, so she retreated back to her room where she waited for Yo-chan, or mother, implying that she didn't actually know Yo was her dad. She died sometime after this. I think they hid Yo being her dad from her so she wouldn't accidentally spill the beans. That would be a pretty sick scandal to have the head of the island's son and daughter have a daughter together. Okay, finally, the last ghost, my favorite ghost in Fatal Frame 4, Kageri and Kaoru Sendou. I can't say Kaoru right, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I'm not entirely sure if I understand their story or not, so bear with me please, but both of them write in a really weird cryptic way and it's hard to understand what they're trying to say, so that's my excuse. Kageri and Kaoru were twins native to the island and part of the Sendou family, a rich and important family on the island. Kageri at least seems to have suffered from some sort of mental illness since birth, saying in her first memo, "Ever since I was born, I've been dying." She then goes on to address her twin saying, "But you were different. Even though we had the same blood running through our veins, you were alive." So, in my opinion, this can be interpreted in a few ways. The first being that Kageri has always been depressed, meanwhile Kaoru has had a lot easier of a time with her mental health. And the second being that Kageri has always had Getsuyuu syndrome and Kaoru hasn't. She's okay. The evidence for this one is that later on in the game, dying while alive is used to describe blooming. I don't know though, I buy a lot more into the depression theory because Kageri wasn't actually hospitalized until after Kaoru died, and you'd think she would have been hospitalized prior if it had gotten bad enough to start writing complete gibberish. This led to Kageri resenting Kaoru, begging Kaoru to join her in her depression and or Getsuyuu syndrome. If you can live while dying will fit like two halves of a shell that fit perfectly. Maybe Kageri actually thought that the reason why she felt so empty was that Kaoru had taken part of her soul when their eggs split, so she wanted to reabsorb her soul back into her body so they could be whole again. This is really confusing. I'm sorry. One day while out on a walk, I guess Kaoru did something to upset Kageri, and so she pushed her, taking away Kaoru's ability to walk. Kaoru began to blame herself for Kageri's sickness, whatever it was, and started to listen to her pleas for Kaoru to live while dying with her. Kaoru ends her last and only letter with, "That's why this is the only thing left for me to do. I hope some light will be able to pierce your darkness." I believe that after this, Kaoru killed herself so that Kageri could have the other half of her soul back, but it didn't actually work. Whatever was wrong with Kageri, it got so bad that she ended up being hospitalized at Rogetsu Hall, where it seems she spent her free time making beautiful clothing, coffins, and collecting creepy photographs. She had a life-size doll named Otashi created in Kaoru's likeness that she then pushed around in Kaoru's old wheelchair, even taking the doll on daily walks. On the second day without suffering, Kageri saw Sakuya blooming in the Rogetsu Hall courtyard and was pretty happy about it, thankfully. She pretty much says she's been waiting for this her whole life, what with being born dead and all, and she decides to go to the beach with Otashi where she probably died. Rest in peace. To this day, if this day were in 1980, Kageri still pushes Watashi around the island, protecting her precious doll from all the other mean ghosties. And that's where I'm going to end things today. Next time we'll talk about the plot. If you want to see that video, then subscribe so you don't miss it. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like so that it shows up in the YouTube search engine more often. I also have a second channel where I put whatever else I want. I'm bad at describing things. Anyway, as always, have a great day, and remember...